I go to work and I feel happy making pastries, especially when I make something that's particularly delicious and I'm like, "Ooh, wow, like I didn't expect that." And then when I see my chefs making delicious food and they feel great about that, and then you see people eating the food and they're happy as well. So I guess it just brings joy to everybody.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. The art of great pastry can be learnt in the pastry kitchens of the best restaurants of the world. But as our food culture evolves, young, smart professionals are transferring their skills to much more accessible surrounds. It means right across Australia, access to world-class pastries is commonplace. But what does it take to bring that to an everyday environment? Lindsay Krahenbring is the head pastry chef of Darvella Patisserie, Paw Paw Cafe and Monocle Coffee. Lindsay, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good. You're one of the stars of pastry in Queensland. Well, what's the attraction of pastry and dessert world to you?
I don't know. I love pastries, and I think the most attractive thing about it is it brings joy to everybody. Like all of my chefs, everybody who comes in, it just makes people happy being able to eat delicious pastries, and I love that.
You come from a family who owned restaurants. What was it like for you growing up with food?
Actually, my mum didn't own a restaurant until I'd just left high school. So, I mean, we always cooked at home together. We did lots of baking and everything. And my mum, she loves cooking. And then I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was in high school. But when I left, and my mum had bought a restaurant. And so I started working for her. I moved to the northern region of New South Wales where her restaurant was and started working for her. And then it was probably about 6 months in that I decided that I love cooking and I wanted to do an apprenticeship. So that's when I started my apprenticeship. It was a small place, a wood fire pizza place. So I learned how to make dough and cook on the wood fire oven and everything. But then when I was in my second year of my apprenticeship, I wanted more. So that's when I decided to move to Sydney to pursue being a chef.
What was it like when your mum made the decision to open a restaurant? What did you think at the time?
It was exciting. I mean, I was pretty young. I didn't really... it was just a job kind of thing. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I used that as an opportunity to get into the workforce and actually I really loved it. So I was lucky in that aspect that I could hop into hospitality and actually really enjoy it and make something of it.
You mentioned that you moved to Sydney to explore a career as a chef. What was the first commercial kitchen in Sydney that you worked in?
The first kitchen was called The Cut Bar and Grill. It's a steakhouse in the Rocks. So I worked under head chef James Privet, and it was an amazing opportunity actually because I didn't really know a lot about all of the restaurants in Sydney and everything, and he employed, I think maybe we were 5 or 6 apprentices in the kitchen at one time, and he really let the apprentices control their own sections and all of that. So I was pretty lucky.
You spent quite a bit of time in Sydney at various restaurants. What were the really integral moments and in your career that were stepping stones for you as a chef?
So when I was working at The Cut, I'm just a commercial cookery. I call myself a pastry chef because I've worked mostly pastry, but I didn't actually do my apprenticeship in pastry. And then when I was a second year apprentice, I worked for a pastry chef called Yuching, and she was just unreal. And I remember that really inspired me to go along the path of being a pastry chef rather than working as a savory chef. And I enjoyed it so much more. And she was really my number one inspiration for becoming a pastry chef. So after I was in my third year of apprenticeship, and I moved to Rockpool Bar and Grill, and was lucky enough to get a job there. And I finished my apprenticeship there, and it was really amazing just learning the art of such simplistic food, but it was just like so delicious. Everything was perfect. And I felt really lucky for that.
What was it about pastry that drew you in? Was there any particular techniques or dishes that really captured you?
I think that I'm quite particular when I'm cooking, and I have quite an artistic side to myself. So I feel like it's easier to express that in pastry. And I mean, it's delicious. I love eating pastry, so there's that too.
Tell us about your time at Rockpool. It's such a big kitchen with so many chefs. Can you take us to a typical day of what it was like in the pastry kitchen, and how many sort of people were you feeding?
It's a huge restaurant. I think I can't remember how many it was seating, maybe 200 or something. And I remember some services we were doing, forward 400 people, and with functions and things as well. I think during service, there was probably 3 or 4 of us in the pastry kitchen. And we also did the desserts for Spice Temple as well, which was below.
After Rockpool Bar and Grill, you worked in many establishments, including Key and Bentley. How different was that compared to that grounding that you had at Rockpool?
It was a lot different. Key was probably one of the hardest kitchens that I've worked in, just because we're there all day, every day, such long hours with the same people. We're breathing one another. It's such a close community, but it gets hard, and I had a few meltdowns there, I won't lie. But I mean, at the end of the day, the experience was incredible, and I've met some really great people along the way, and I wouldn't change that for anything.
Brent Savage is a somewhat underrated chef and very, very talented. What was he like to work with?
Brent's great. He's really easy to approach, easy to talk to, really high expectations, which is it's tough, but it really trains your palate a lot. It's a lot different working at Bentley. Their desserts are not so sweet, more along the savoury line. So it was like a different, it was like learning a different palate to be able to fit into that kind of flavour. But I think that's actually trained myself a lot into working in the bakery or a patisserie, because having that savoury influence into sweet things, actually it's helped a lot, because I'm not much into going into a patisserie and having a overwhelming sweetness flavours, lots of sugar and all of that. I'm more into that savoury or sour, fresh flavours.
Can you give us an example of a dessert or two from your time at Bentley that sort of exemplifies that leaning towards a savoury type of dessert?
Yep. There was a dessert that I created when I was at Bentley, actually, and it's probably one of my favourite desserts that I've been able to put together, and it was not without the influence of, my senior chefs there as well. It was a Sake Lee's ice cream, and with strawberries and tonka bean, and I'm not a fan of sake at all. I don't really enjoy it that much, but there's something about, we had a whole bunch of Sake Lees in the freezer from a previous function, and I always go through this, I've got to use everything up in the freezer, make space and no wastage, everything. And so I tasted a little bit of the Sake Lees, and, it's quite creamy, not so offensive in flavour, because I kind of find sake offensive. And so decided to turn it into an ice cream, and it was delicious actually, and then paired it with some macerated strawberries and some crispy strawberry rice and a tonka bean curd, and it was delicious.
Wow.
Yeah.
You spent 4 years in Sydney, but you ventured overseas. Well, what triggered that, and what did you do?
I had a partner at the time. He was a chef as well, and then we wanted to go traveling, and it was just kind of spur of the moment. I was like, let's go to Canada. I applied for a visa and got a visa, and then we moved to Montreal first, which was quite difficult. We probably spent about 2 months looking for a job and couldn't get a job anywhere because we didn't actually speak French. And then a restaurant gave me a call. A head chef from a restaurant gave me a call and said, "Oh, I see you've got Key on your resume." I know Key. And he was like, "You can come and be a pastry chef." I was like, "Oh, cool, I got a job." So, I mean, it's good working for, big names helps you, obviously. But I spent a lot of time, I moved around a lot in Canada to different restaurants, and worked 1 year in Montreal and then 1 year in Vancouver, and worked at a bakery in Vancouver, and then a little dessert and champagne bar. And it was really fun working over there and doing a lot of stuff. But then obviously it was a lot about the travel as well. And I spent a lot of time taking breaks from work and seeing the country and traveling down to America and eating lots of good food and lots of donuts. And yeah.
What did you learn from your time in Canada?
A lot, but the most that I took from it was just meeting a whole range of different people with different backgrounds, and just making a lot of friends. And it's where I kind of found my passion for the best donuts ever, because in Vancouver they have so many donut places, and I just would spend my days off going around and trying all different donuts, and sometimes I crave them. I've traveled back to Canada since I left, and always just to go back and get some donuts from Granville Island markets.
This episode is proudly supported by Montague, handpicked for you.
The things that we're really looking for in plums, first of all, they've got to be sweet. We're really looking for a full flavour explosion in our plums. Red flesh is critically important to us, higher in antioxidants, so all that good stuff. And then we're also looking at a slightly firmer texture, so there's almost a little crunch. That's the real driver for us.
For more information, go to montague.com.au.
What brought you back to Australia and to take on sort of a head chef role that you have?
I moved back to Australia because my visa ran out, so I guess I had to. That's when I actually moved back to Sydney, and I did the whole stint at Bentley then. But I didn't want to live in Sydney anymore. It was just too much, a bit too big. And before I moved to Brisbane, I actually moved up into the Daintree and worked at one of the luxury lodges of Australia as the head pastry chef at Silky Oaks. And that was pretty cool, actually. It was, what an incredible place in the world. It's amazing up there.
With such a humid climate, how difficult is it creating great pastries?
It was tough, actually. The summer months are just unbearable in the kitchen. I was making little chocolates and everything, so tempering chocolate in hot, humid climates was not fun. But I had a method and it worked. But yeah, it was challenging, but making bread was great. It's a perfect environment for all of those yeast products, so I guess it had its perks as well. But after a year and doing the summer in the Daintree, I couldn't do it for another one. It was just too much. So then I moved back to Brisbane because my whole family are close to this area. My brother lives in Brisbane and my parents live in Toowoomba. So I wanted to kind of be close to my family. And Brisbane's great. I mean, it's got everything that you want in a city, except it's just not, it's quite relaxed, which is a great atmosphere. And in this job that I am in now with the Valent group, it kind of just happened due to COVID. It wasn't planned. I didn't expect to, run, and I'm part owner of Darvella, actually. I didn't expect to be part owner of a bakery anytime soon. But it all happened when the first outbreak of COVID, and we everyone went into lockdown, restaurants shut everywhere, and no one had a job. And Gina, the owner of Paw Paw Cafe, was looking for a pastry chef to come in and do a pop-up bakery. And I said, oh yeah, I can do that, a few hours a week. No worries. It'll keep me afloat while we're all waiting to see what will happen. And we started doing that, just a few donuts. I think the first week I made like 20 donuts and a few brownies and cakes or something. And she was like, oh, we're going to have to up that. So we upped it to like, 300 donuts. And it went crazy. It went absolutely crazy. And Gina was like, oh, let's open a bakery together. And I said, oh, no, thanks. I don't think I can do that. Anyway, probably, 3 months of convincing later, and I thought, all right, okay, let's do it. So then we went on the search for the perfect location. And there wasn't a lot to choose from, I suppose. We've looked at a few existing bakeries, but, then we decided to just build our own, and ended up in Bulimba on Oxford Street. And the location is just, it's great. It's perfect. We've built this beautiful bakery, and it's extremely popular. So I feel, lucky and proud. It's great.
This is the first business that you've part-owned. What's it been like for you being owner and head chef? Has there been challenges and obstacles that you didn't envisage?
I feel very lucky, actually, because Gina's great as my boss and part owner. She knows everything to do with business, and she's got her marketing like perfect, so we've not had a problem in that aspect. And I've been very lucky as to handpick my team in the kitchen. So I've got myself and 5 pastry chefs. So there's 6 of us in there, and a lot of them are quite new to the kitchen and this whole world, and they've just excelled. I'm so proud of them, and we're just doing a fantastic job. So if I didn't have all of these people, absolutely I'd be super stressed out, and it wouldn't be as successful. But I think I've been very lucky.
How has the process of baking helped you during the last 18 months?
I think that especially with all of the lockdowns and the situation that, nobody really knows what's going to happen. But everybody wants a little sweet treat at the end of every day. So I think that it's been, quite a successful project of ours. And the support has been, it's been great. So, yeah.
It's been a very big smash success since you opened. Tell us about some of the things that you're making there that really stand out on the menu.
So we've always got our donut selection, as that was kind of the original product at our pop-up bakery, and they're like very popular every day. But we decided that as our standard cake range, we didn't want something that was just a cake that you could buy in any bakery or patisserie. So we decided that we would make what we're calling baby cakes. It's a miniature version, so a 4-inch version of like big stacked cakes, so like semi-naked and decorated like drip cakes and like wedding style cakes, but they're tiny. They're like a four-person cake, and so they look really decadent, but they're little baby versions. And I mean, in the beginning I was like, yeah, this is a cool idea, this will be great. And then we were pretty slow, you're still learning in the bakery and stuff, and I was like, oh gosh, maybe we're a bit off more than we can chew making these like tiny versions of decadent cakes. And of course, when you're doing like little tiny baby ones and making 40 of them, it takes quite some time, but we got faster and now it's pretty good. And they've become very popular.
You've also got an incredible range of croissants. There's a strawberry sundae croissant. Can you tell us about what you're doing there?
Yeah, so every weekend we do a special flavour, and I leave it up to the chefs at work. I try not to, I give them my input and teach them different methods, but I like to offer them to make their own suggestions of flavours every week. Helps them learn, keeps them involved, it's a bit exciting. And so every week we do a different flavour, we get creative, we fill it full to the brim of flavoured custard or a jelly or something, and decorate the top. And it's become really popular. This weekend we're doing the strawberry sundae croissant because it was supposed to be Eka, but the Eka has been cancelled. So we have made a croissant cone. So it's not a full croissant, and we're serving it in one of our Darvella coffee cups. And then we're filling it with vanilla custard and strawberry jelly, and then topping it with chantilly cream and strawberry sauce and fresh strawberries. It's delicious. It's very decadent.
What sort of feedback do you get from these products? Do you have any sort of standout comments that you can tell us about?
We do. Most of the exceptional feedback is generally about our weekend special croissants. It started off as just let's get fun and creative between the kitchen kind of thing every now and then, and it became so popular that every weekend we're like trying to think of new flavors, and people are getting really excited about it. So sometimes we might put on our social media like a poll, what kind of flavor would you like, and let people choose the flavor and all kinds of stuff like that. Yeah, it's become quite popular. So I'd say that that's probably our biggest item is definitely our special flavored croissants of the weekend, and people travel for it like crazy. So it's quite good. And the baby cakes, of course.
You travelled through Canada and the States in search of great donuts, and Darvella started with donuts. What makes a great donut?
I think it has to be obviously fluffy, but some like sustenance to the donut. We make our donuts with full cream milk and lots of butter and like all that good stuff. We don't scab out on any of the, good flavored ingredients, rather than making our dough with water and things like that. But I think that the dough needs to be a really rich, nice flavor rather than just the filling. So I think that makes a good donut. And we hand roll our donuts too, so it's got a lot of love and time and effort into them.
What do you love about pastry?
I think just the joy that it brings people. I go to work and I feel happy making pastries, especially when I make something that's particularly delicious and I'm like, ooh, wow, I didn't expect that. And then when I see my chefs making delicious food and they feel great about that, and then you see people eating the food and they're happy as well. So I guess it just brings joy to everybody.
Darvella was unexpected for you and a real success during the last 18 months. Do you have any sort of future plans for that at the moment?
Yeah, so we've definitely spoken about plans for a Darvella 2.0, but at the moment we're just trying to make the original Darvella perfect before we move on to any future plans.
What sort of impact has having this business and this creative outlet had on you?
I guess it's definitely changed my life a little bit. I mean, I went from, a year ago, I felt like a bit of a nomad and I could fit my whole life into a backpack. And now I've kind of settled down into, my own home, and I've got a business and a home now, and I've kind of like unloaded myself, and it feels quite good. I feel comfortable, which is great.
Well, no doubt that there'll be many more people queuing to get those incredible croissants and donuts this weekend coming. Lindsay, we've loved having you on Deep in the Weeds today to hear your story. Please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.